Okay, so I have another box of artifacts here. They are mostly bifaces, and I was thinking about these the other day, and I wasn't going to show them, but I'm gonna show them after all. Uh, I guess the reason why I didn't want to show them is because it's pretty straightforward as far as these go. Um, they're just roughed out bifaces, and I can't tell you if these were bifaces that were supposed to be used but weren't, or they were manufacturing errors, or a combination of those things. Some of them might be errors, some of them might be used, some of them may be obtained in trade and never used. I don't know. But a lot of these have issues, right? But it may not have mattered back in the day. They might have still used them all. Or they may have discarded these, or a good portion of these. And I can't really tell you too much about these other than just looking at the way they were trying to flake them. I can't tell you if these are heat treated or not. I can tell you, or I can see heat damage on some of them. This one is not heat damaged. So I think they might be useful. I'll go through these pretty quick. Some have stacks on them like this one. Most of this is pretty rough stone. I do have this type of material in my collection. Rock that I have gathered or that friends have given to me. So I'm familiar with the material and how it naps. And some of this, especially once you get past the cortex and into the center, it's pretty tough. So the way I deal with it is heat treating, of course, but they may have not heat treated some of these. Some of these will nap well in the raw state. Okay. But there's a couple other important questions and important things to notice on these things. For example, we always get the question, how did they make these? Well, these are fairly easy to predict, right? That they were made with some sort of direct percussion. Probably hammerstone, because that's the easiest, right? You just pick up a hammerstone and start whacking away at these things, right? But here's the thing. If we find one that's broken, or if we find one that has a major defect, like this here, and we start saying things like, well, I know how to get rid of that defect. So instead of doing what they did and get the stack, let's do something different with our abo tools and with the natural materials. Let's teach how we can avoid these things, right? Which sounds like a noble goal, right? Let's teach how we can avoid these things. But if you're teaching how to avoid these things, you're teaching how to avoid how they were made. Are you following me? We need to make the mistakes in the same way that they did in order to understand how they made these, right? Does that make sense? I'm always asked, how do they make these? Well, let's look at them. Let's look not only at their successes, but their mistakes. If we want to duplicate how they made these, we need to duplicate how they made their mistakes as well, and how they developed these bifaces. If we look at these bifaces and say, there's a better way to do this, or this is kind of sloppy, we can use our abo tools in better ways. We are not learning how they make these, or how they made these, and we're not answering the question, how did they make these? What we're doing is we're saying, how do we make them better than they did, which does not give any insight into how they were made. Well, I can't say that. It does. You have to know how they were made in order to correct their mistakes, right? So there's that. But there's more than one way to make the same mistake. So you can't really know how they made the mistake. Exactly. There's more than one way to make a mistake like this. Are you following? So I was thinking about that today. And if we really want to know how they made these, and we really want to duplicate their methods and make them the same way that they made them, we need to make them with the same mistakes that they had. Okay? We need to break them like this when we're making them, if we want to do it the same way that they did. Right? We need to set up the striking platform off center. It's right there. It's not in the direct center for this thinning flake, and we need to scoop out large flakes from the middle before we do the end, like in this case, or we're not doing it the same way that they were doing it. Okay, so I'm just going to show you this, and with that in mind, see how this edge goes upward and this edge goes downward. Are there any modern knappers that develop their preforms in this way, where this edge is going up, this edge is going down, and it's kind of twisted and kind of wonky? If you are not developing your preform in this way, then you are not doing it the way that they did it. Okay, I think I made that point clear. So does that give us an excuse to be sloppy with our work? No. Well, how do we build in sloppiness into our work so that we can do it sloppy like they did in some cases? How do we actually intentionally do the wrong thing? Yeah, that's a hard question, right? The thing that I'm thinking, it would be easiest just to consider this as an expedient way of doing it. If you approach it as expedient and random and instinctive, without much planning, then you'll end up with stuff like this, where it's not ideal. This preform's not ideal, right? We could do better. But the thing is, if you want to do it the way they did, you're not supposed to do it better than this. You're supposed to do it like this. Okay. So make them with expedient methods is the way I think that they were made, right? But that's just my opinion. Like I said in the beginning, maybe a lot of these were not used, or mistakes that were discarded, right? Or made by inexperienced knappers and stuff. Now, there are lots of artifacts that are very expertly made, and we need to do that too. If we want to recreate how they made those, we need to know how they made those as well. But how they made them spans the whole range, poor quality and good quality. We need to understand how to make their mistakes, if we want to duplicate the way it was made in the past. Okay, I think I've made that point. All right, so there's a stack on this one, pretty hefty. How would I go about clearing that off? Well, if I had literally tons of this, I wouldn't even bother. It's got concrete, right? By the time I finish clearing off that turtleback, it'll be much smaller. I probably wouldn't bother, and this was probably just a discard. Now, could it be used as another tool for something else? I mean, is that a spoke shave or whatever they call it? Could be, but I doubt it. Are they trying to prepare a platform there? It doesn't really look like it. Are these edges ground ready for the next pass? Not that I can tell. Most of these, in fact, I hazard to guess all of these have no edge preparation. Does that mean they were only using antler for the reduction? No. I think they were using hammerstones as well as antler. Was it soft hammerstone only or hard hammerstone? Well, I have hard hammerstones in this collection with, facets on the hammerstones. So they obviously were using it for some sort of reduction, right? Now, is this a tool when it has an edge like this? Yeah, it very well could be a digging tool, this one here, or some sort of tool. It looks like a digging tool to me, and hafted to something and used as a digging tool, especially with an edge kind of developed in this way, either through use or on purpose. It could have snapped off and then used as a tool after that, or it was complete and it was like a hoe with a complete top on it, and then as it was being used it broke and then they discarded it. Let me see if I can find a biface that's got a lot of weird edge work on it. Let's see. Like this one here, you see the crushing area, crushed area, crushed area. This is a nice piece of stone. Right? Well, at least design-wise, with the nice patterns in it. But what kind of napper would make mistakes like this? Is that inexperience, or the tool that they were using isn't perfect for the material? Why would they crush the edges and not prepare anything? And why would they hit right there instead of zigzagging it? Right? Well, we can do better than that these days, right? Well, that's not... If you want to recreate how they were made, thinking that we can do better than they did is not the way to go about it. Okay. So this one just snapped. This is pretty common snap for this type of material. It has a patina on it, right? But I recently got a bunch of this stuff raw, and I tried working it raw, right? I always try working it raw first before a heat treat. And it has a tendency to snap with the slightest amount of, well, not the slightest, but if you start to get serious about thinning the base or thinning the tip, it'll snap in the middle. And it seems like it won't because it's so strong and difficult to flake. But yeah, even tough stone will snap right in the middle. So they were obviously thinning from the tip or the base and snapping them in the middle, or something to that effect. I think it's important that we start to understand how they made their mistakes and incorporate those methods into how we are doing it, so that we know how they were made and are duplicating how they were made. Same with this one. What modern napper is going to develop a biface like this? There's obvious strategic errors, but that's how they were made. And what do I mean by strategic errors? I probably would have skinned some of this off, skinned the cortex off first, right, to get rid of the cracks and stuff before I started to thin it from underneath the cortex here. I mean, from this side, I would skin this off first, because you never know what's in here. There's a lot of incipient cracks, incomplete bulbs of percussion, and all sorts of weird things going on just under the cortex, even though that's the best material in a lot of cases. I tend to skin this off early in the bifacing. Unless I know for sure there isn't any dings, but I can see a lot of dings. Okay, so like, yeah, these with the obvious curve in them, Obviously, strategic error. Big old turtle back on this one. Yeah, if I had plenty of material, I would just discard these if I was trying for a larger point. You can't really get a large point. I mean, you can't really get much out of this one. You're going to lose a lot of the width or length to thin this down. And if I feel like some of these have good edge preparation, I'll let you know, but none of these seem to have any abrading. Now, these days we know that we shouldn't hit a non-abraded edge with a hammerstone, right? That's one of the things that we avoid doing, but they were probably hitting unabraded edges with the hammerstone. This looks like heat damage, but after the fact. They wouldn't nap it with that heat damage in it. This is heat damage after the fact. Now, why would a biface be heat damaged? Well, you know, natural forces, forest fires and whatnot. I think this was a failed heat treat attempt where they bifaced it and they said, well, it's a little bit too tough. Let's heat treat it. Oops, too much heat. Tip snap. You know, this edge may have been prepared a little bit for the next round of flakes, but it's not ground down at all. Yeah, and many of these could be just made by inexperienced nappers that didn't know how to thin it down. Another possibility is you store it in a state like this so it doesn't get broken. You know, if you had a bunch of thin bifaces stored away and someone came along and they were carrying a big rock or something, or carrying something heavy, and then dropped it on some of your bifaces, that would ruin your day. But if they're tough like this, you drop a rock or something falls, like a big log or something on your bifaces, they're not going to break. That could be one reason to store them in this state. Just a thought. Okay, I'm going to stop at 30 minutes, even if I haven't finished the whole box of bifaces. But I think you're getting the idea. I'm seeing a pattern here of a lot of aggressive bold flakes. Not much edge preparation. No secondary flaking to make it look better. It's just all smash and go, you know, smash and trash if they don't meet the size requirement, I guess. It's just all haphazard looking type of flaking. And yes, these are all artifacts. And yes, they were dug from a layer below the surface. These are not damaged by modern machinery or anything. They may have been slightly damaged just in the move from where I picked them up to my house. It was like a 3-hour drive, so there's a little bit of dings as far as that goes, but it would make these edges seem duller, right, as they bang up against each other, but they're still sharp. There is no edge preparation as far as I can tell. Now, were they just preparing each individual platform and then striking? Yeah, they could be, but it looks rather haphazard. I wouldn't think that they would be that careful with each platform and have it so haphazard looking. These are pretty rough. You know what I mean? Pretty rough looking. And these cherts vary in quality. Some are excellent quality in a raw state, and some of them really, really stink. Really, really hard to nap. Some of these could be tools of some sort, but I tend to think not. I tend to think that these are specifically bifaces for projectile points and not tools, because I think if it was a tool that would be utilized right away, you could see the use wear too. You wouldn't say, okay, this is a good scraper or a good hoe for digging up roots. Let's store this. No, let's just use this right away for that purpose. Heat treating after the fact, so it's another piece that could have been thought of as inferior quality. So let's try some heat to see if it works better, and then oops, too much heat. And yeah, that was a flake taken after it broke. Very nice material. You know, careful. It doesn't look like any careful edge preparation at all. It doesn't look like methodical shaping at all. Now this one here is fairly regular, but they still broke it. You know, it's developed, it's well developed. It's got a sharp edge, right? It's not ground down or anything. It's well proportioned and stuff, but they still broke it. So they were using a technique that was not very safe. This is good quality material also. That's a shame. That was going to be a big biface, obviously. Very nice biface. And you don't see many modern nappers develop their bifaces in this way. I mean, I kind of do, because I am an opportunistic napper. A lot of times it looks like I'm just fumbling through the initial reduction process, and I am to a certain extent, but also I'm just being expedient and see what happens. I don't prepare my edges very well, and I'm just going by what they used to do. And it seems to make sense, you know, if you have plenty of material, for one, which they did, especially in this area where you get this kind of stuff, you can haphazardly develop these. Looks like there might be an internal crack here too. But I don't know if that's after the fact. Anyway, I have no idea why they would discard it, but they might have just been saving it. Some of these have translucency. A lot of these don't, but some of them do. Like this is very translucent. Once you get it thin, it's very translucent. Yeah, but they were really hitting these pretty hard to get that to break off on such a thick piece. Hitting it really hard with something without preparing the edges. Although I think this one here, this feels a little bit ground down here. Just slightly right there. This feels a little bit battered, like they took some off of that with some brushing or whatever you call it. Looks like a piece of tabular chert with nasty material in the center. Okay, we're getting down to the small ones. Now this is an insect or something. Yeah. You can see that they made a mistake here when they were reducing it. Crushed it quite a bit. Probably just chucked it after that happened. And they were developing this for some reason. Or practice. Nice heat treat mistake, or random heat pops. This is heat damage as well, and a snap. Nice little biface. That little hump is not too difficult to remove with punch work, but with direct percussion it might be a little difficult. Another snapped base. Yeah, the edges they don't look done to me, so probably broken in manufacturing. Most of these, if they're broken in manufacture. Now this looks like a base was being developed on it. Base looks, fairly complete. But it's very easy to do that sort of break on this kind of material. Very brittle. Nice stuff, right? Very translucent, but very easy to break. Yeah, so how do I know that's the base? Well, it looks like it's not pointy, right? And it's not snapped off. It's deliberately made this way. I don't know of any other tool that would be made this way. It just looks like it'd be hafted right here. Now, it does not look complete because the blade is way too fat. Yeah, this is just chipped around the edges. Big old turtleback. Probably discarded. Too thick. Heat damage on this one. Nice material. Got fossils in it and stuff. Highly translucent. You have just a bunch of little pieces. Why they would develop a tip like this early on, I don't know, because that snaps off pretty easy. But if we want to do it like they did it, we need to develop these tips early on. Okay. So yeah, I'm running out of time, so I'll just cut it off. Some of this stuff does change color when heat treating, but most of this stuff around here, or around Central Texas, doesn't really change color much. Not much at all happens when you heat treat it, as far as coloration or translucency. In fact, I was looking at a rock hound who makes jewelry out of agates, and she was using heat to enhance the color and enhance the translucency. These are not agates, but that's another thing about heat treating. It does change color, and it can enhance the look of the stone. Okay. Hopefully that wasn't too boring. Nice big old turtleback on that one. Now this one, I think you can make the argument that this is actually a tool, like a Kerrville knife. But this edge still needs to be ground down or dulled in some way so it won't cut. It won't be cutting your hand if you're using it like a Kerrville knife. Now that's why they usually have Cortex on this side. But yeah, this looks like it's an already developed tool tip. And you know, I'm not saying it could have been wrapped and used this way, so I'm not saying it wasn't used, but I would probably grind it down or batter it down so it's more round before I used it. All right, that's it.